Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 237, and this will be the What I'm Investing in special part 13. And what a week it's been. As many of you are aware, this past Friday on October 10th was one of the most epic crypto liquidation rituals we've ever experienced, and clearly the most sinister level of market manipulation, with proof being one unidentified insider initiating a massive short trade that started within 24 hours of Trump's tariff announcement, and this specific whale continued to build these short positions until literally the minute before Trump's post on Truth Social, which mentioned that they're considering 100% tariff on China. Of course, you all know what happened next. This insider then profited almost $200 million in minutes, whilst all of us retail investors were being locked out of our accounts. There was glitches across the board. I think even XRP's entire market cap, about 50% of its market cap, was wiped out in 8 minutes. Of course, it's recovered since, but this is epic. And the fact that this trader put $80 million into this single account to fund it just the day before this event, and then an additional $30 million in the day of the event. To top it all off, allegedly they created the account they did this all on just the day before. Well, what does that tell you? I'll let you decide what to think about that. So the question is, how did they know? Should we care? And why was BlackRock there to scoop up Bitcoin at the exact bottom of this crash? And why was retail, us, completely locked out of almost every crypto exchange during this crash, and then only able to access our accounts well after the fact when most of these cryptos were already recovered by almost 100%? Again, remember, most of them were down 50 to 60% during the crash when we weren't able to access these exchanges. Don't you see what's going on? This was a coordinated attack on crypto investors where insiders liquidated everyone in leverage trades, then locked the casino doors while they got to shop an absolute fire sale. Then once all the prime product was stuffed into their vaults, they reopened the gates of hell and we had to stare at the table scraps. A classic crypto liquidation ritual by the market maker. And they're using tariffs and Trump as the narrative. So there's someone to blame, which we don't do that here, but you guys get it. The whole look here, don't look there. My wolves here know the drill. So now that we've went from last week with Bitcoin hitting a new all-time high and the sentiment starting to get greedy, to this weekend where the entire crypto space is now in extreme fear with a narrative to go along with it, well, this makes it the perfect time to do a What I'm Investing in special, continuing on to part 13 in this series. And before we kick this one off, please, I need every one of you to understand that this week we're about to move into is going to be absolutely crazy. And I'm in kind of an imperfect position releasing this here on a Sunday before the traditional markets open up tomorrow. And the fact that traditional markets were closed while this crypto liquidation ritual was happening on Friday, this means I'll need you to do your best to stay neutral as I review everything here with you today, because a lot can change tomorrow when the markets open back up. And I completely understand that a lot of you might be watching other analysts and hearing other people's takes on this whole situation. Some people saying the cycle's over, some people saying it's just beginning. There's a lot of noise. And all I can do here as an honorable leader is provide you with my truth. All right? So I get it. We're in very emotional times right now. It's very, very important for us to all stay neutral, as I will be throughout delivering this podcast to you all today. And overall, I want to remind you, like I said in my last written market update on Friday, which was released before the crash, I titled it, "This isn't the first time this has happened." And now that we've had this crash, I want you to know that I still haven't changed my stance on things. So we could get that out of the way at the very beginning of today's Red Pill. Regarding my opinion on how everything went down, I feel this was a sentiment reset before continuation to the upside. And Bitcoin breaks, well, until Bitcoin breaks structure in the macro, which you can see right here, we're just back at the same prices we were a couple weeks ago. By tomorrow, we could be all the way back to the prices we were last week. So Until Bitcoin breaks macro structure, I'll be maintaining my posture and sticking to my bullish thesis that we're still on schedule for a significant rally in the altcoins across the board for late Q4 into early Q1 2026. Just like in 2017 into early 2018, as well as 2020 into early 2021, and now here in Q4 of 2025. Ugh, so much to say. So as you could all imagine, we have a lot to cover here in today's Red Pill podcast. So let's do what we do best and dive right into it. But quickly, before we get started, make sure you get relaxed. Make sure to get comfortable. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little later out there in the matrix. And also make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins that you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill podcast. But please, before you leave a comment, just make sure that you use the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered that project in at least 3 months. And if it's been over 3 months since I've reviewed that altcoin, or if I've never covered that altcoin here before, as long as it has at least 1 year of chart history here on TradingView, then you can go ahead and comment below with the name of the altcoin and include the ticker symbol next to it as well. And whatever submissions get the most likes, those top 4 to 3 to 4, as well as last week's top 3 to 4 projects that you guys voted on, will be combined together for next week's Red Pill podcast. Since this week we are doing the What I'm Investing in special, that means we're going to be taking last week's votes and then this week's votes to use for next week. Okay, so now really quickly, just to get this out of the way, since exoterically this crash was tied to Donald Trump and his posts over on Truth Social regarding, World War tariff, if you take from Trump's birthday, which was June 14th, 2025, and you measure it over to October 10th, the day of this crypto liquidation ritual, you have 119 days. And this liquidation ritual actually started when Bitcoin started to break down from 119K. So if you were to go on the Bitcoin chart to like the hourly, for example, do it really quickly, you're going to see that it was right here. If you look at the price on the right when we started to get to the 119K level and closing hourlies, we cascaded to the downside. So at 119K Bitcoin, the crash is happening 119 days after President Trump's birthday. Of course, exoterically, he was at fault for all of this. That's not my opinion. That's not what I'm saying, but this is what the mainstream narrative is. So you're already seeing the code come together. And I also believe we allegedly had around $19 billion in liquidations. So when you stack this up in the history of events, this is a significantly higher number than the second biggest crypto liquidation event. I mean, it's pretty much all of the top 10 crypto liquidation events combined, and this is still likely a higher number. Absolutely mind-blowing. So now getting back to things, getting back to our key chart over here, and this 119 code. This is the mirror of the number 9/11, the Twin Towers ritual. And remember, the 9/11 event happened in 2001, which was in the year of the snake. We're here in the year of the snake. So there's something to be said to this. And I believe this will also add additional value for everything that we're going to be experiencing for the remainder of this year of the snake, which ends in mid-February of next year. But getting back to this, we have the 9/11 code. 9/11 event initially happened in the year of the snake. We're here in the year of the snake. We have this 119 code tied to Trump. And remember, this has actually happened with Trump before, a couple times actually, where the crypto market dramatically overreacted to one of his posts on Truth Social. So unless you're like brand new to crypto and you only got in like, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, you know what I mean. If you've been here since the beginning of the year, then you definitely know what I mean, because it's been pretty much nonstop with him, from the launch of his meme coin and his wife's meme coin on the day before his inauguration, to what happened on February 2nd into March 3rd. And then we had everything going down with the April Liberation Day stuff. So To isolate a specific moment this happened, perhaps you guys remember March 2nd into March 3rd. So let me just get back to a daily chart over here. We're hiding all the mess, and we just want to focus on these two candles right here. So we have the 2nd of March and we have the 3rd of March, and we were talking about the Twin Towers, and those are your Twin Towers candles. Very interesting thing to point out was the fact that this happened into March 3rd. That's the Gregorian 3-3 date. So there's your 33 code, the master number 33. And now this is where things get interesting, because if you plug in from September 7th, which was the total lunar eclipse we just had, and then you measure it over to October 10th, this liquidation event that we just experienced, those are 33 days apart as well. And then if you take from the March 3rd date, 3-3, we were just talking about the Twin Towers candle structure. And remember, March 3rd was also the day leaving 303 days left in the year. You remove the 0 in the rules of numerology, and there you have 33 again, the master number 33. When we tie this date to 10-10 date, they're 222 days apart. So note, the master number 22, the master builder, master destroyer, that 222 gives it emphasis, making it even more a more powerful reset energy. But now that I've laid out the foundation, you need to see this, as many of you might have already started to anticipate what I'm about to get into, and that's the number 47 and how the number 47 connects to all of this, because that's been the theme for pretty much the last 20 or so Red Pill podcasts. So if you think about the fact that Trump is the 47th president, then of course we're going to have 47 codes tied to these rituals. And if you take from October 10th, just this past Friday, crypto liquidation ritual, over to the next major eclipse that we'll have. This is very important to point out. But over to the next major eclipse that we'll have, which is on February 17th. Let me just quickly show you this. We have an annular solar eclipse, which will also be Chinese New Year, the year of the horse. And you look at the distance between these two dates, you're going to see that 47 code right there. This liquidation event happened 4 months and 7 days before Chinese New Year. And what's so incredible about this is just another reminder to everyone that the last day of the year of the snake that we're in right now will be the 47th day of the year. So if you were to include the end date, you would have 4 months and 7 days leading you to the day that's the 47th day of next year. It's your 47 code twice. Mind blowing. Ritual confirmed. And as I showed you all last week, because of this number 47 being so significant for this year, this is exactly why I'm focused on the 47th week of this year, which will be November 17th or 23rd, with this date range again being the 47th week. And I covered this thoroughly in last week's Red Pill podcast. So definitely review that if you haven't already. Also, it's worth noting, that just days before the 47th week of this year will also be, let me show you, the 47th day left in the year. That'll be on November 14th. So pay attention to this as well, because November 14th is also leading into the 47th week of the year. So when you were to tie this date to the 7th of April, the 4-7 date, just start to see how this code all comes together. Because remember before I showed you the 222 code? Well, April 7th, you all know, the 4-7 date, we had a major market crash from tariff, World War, Trump drama on Liberation Day, April 2nd, leading to this crash. You guys know the drill. And this was the lowest everything went in that crash on April 7th. So we have that 4-7 connection, and we're tying it to the day with 47 days left in the year. And we have yet another 222 connection. So absolutely mind-blowing stuff here, guys. So this all ties back to the 47 code. So 4-7 date, 222 days apart from the day that's leaving 47 days left in the year, which then transitions us into the 47th week of the year. on November 17th. And remember, the last day of the year of the snake will be the 16th of February. Just brought that up a little bit ago. And that'll be your 47 days in the year. So this is really, really important to consider. Wrap up today's decode. I feel that October 10th, the date that we all just experienced, that'll go down in history. Well, I know it was an orchestrated event coordinated by crypto exchanges themselves after they were given orders by the apex predator to jump, and the exchanges responded back saying how high, or in this case, how low. And here we are. All the leverage has now been wiped out. Sentiment has officially been reset. And although it's very early to say such a thing, but what I'm about to say is typically the ideal essence to embody during times like this is when others are fearful, get greedy. When there's blood in the streets, do the opposite of the herd. And here we are, wolves amongst sheep. So I'm personally feeling optimistic about this flash crash. And now I'm going to show you some additional reasons why in the charts so that you can see for yourself that this is not the first time that we've had a quote unquote unconfident and scary October here in crypto land. And this is where we'll start. This is where this chart comes into play, which isolates this current crypto cycle that we're in since the recovery from the bear market bottom for Bitcoin in November of 2021, which, by the way, it had a major bottom right there on a total lunar eclipse to finish off our lunar cycle. So we all know here the power of eclipses, and this is why I feel it's very interesting that 33 days after our recent total lunar eclipse, we had this major flash crash event. But anyways, that's just a side note. Now, getting back to this chart, you'll see that we have the years of 2022 and 2023, and in both years, in October, we had a correction that bottomed into what turned out to be almost the same exact date in two separate years, with October 11th, 2023 being the bottom for that October correction, and October 10th marking the bottom of the October correction last year. And here we are in October 2025. Exactly 1 year later, on the exact date of October 10th, we get this flash crash that so far has marked the bottom of the move. And of course, I put emphasis on the word so far because we don't know if this push down into October 10th this past Friday is in fact the bottom. But given the facts we discussed in the intro of this podcast and the narrative they've floated out to go along for the ride and the amount of leverage that was wiped out of the face of this earth, well, these key points can increase our confidence that this mid-October pattern can be playing out just like it did last year and the year before, with October 10th being, quote, the low for Bitcoin. Now, what's also interesting to mention is the fact that in both of these iterations in October 2023 and October 2024, it only took about 2 weeks for us to fully recover from this correction. And last year, it took exactly 4 weeks, so like 28 days, for Bitcoin to push to a new high in the structure, which, by the way, that was a new all-time high at the time, because we had, of course, a couple of days where we were hitting new all-time highs, but we kept getting smacked down, and this lasted a while, man. This lasted from here when Bitcoin finally broke 69K, which was the last cycle peak, all the way 240 days. So about 3/4 of the year, we were just stuck at that resistance around 70K. But after the October 10th correction, the one we just got, 4 weeks later was when we concretely started breaking out into price discovery for the first time. So yes, these were new all-time highs a couple times, but then this was price discovery. That's very, very powerful for us to take note of, because it took about 28 days from that October bottom right here to having a new daily candle close all-time high. And since this low was hit on the same exact day this year, this gives us hope for a new daily candle close all-time high in the structure around November 6th. So that would be November 6th next month, very soon, which interestingly enough will be right around the full supermoon in Taurus. So we have right there October 6th, which also will be a Monday moon day. All right. So this will be a full supermoon in Taurus. It's technically October 5th, October 6th, however you want to look at it. But speaking of Taurus, as many of you are aware, Taurus is the bull. We're talking about the bull run. We use these terminologies all the time, right? You guys know this. So we just had Bitcoin top recently on a full moon on October 6th. Then we have the October full moon in November. On November 5th, full moon in Taurus. So because I was just talking a moment ago about how November 6th would align with what we did last year, and that's right around a full moon, I think it's pretty interesting how we've been topping on these full moons lately, or at least we've had many iterations so far over the past couple of years where Bitcoin has been pretty bullish into a full moon. Usually a sell-off right after though, but it almost feels like these market makers are following my work. They know people are finding out about these moon cycles now. So they're doing the opposite of what they did in the 2021 cycle when I discovered this, where a majority of the microcycle tops were on new moons for Bitcoin. Now it's full moons. So it'd be wild if that was true. But anyways, whatever. One very important decoding gem that I need to share with you really quickly about the upcoming supermoon in Taurus and the specific date of November 6th, which will be pretty much the day after that full moon, is that November 6th has a very important number tied to it. Let me show you real quick. It'll be the 55 days left in the year. And for those of you that have been watching these decodes, especially if you watched my Year of the Snake decode, you know 55 is one of our key numbers for the Year of the Snake. Also, it will be the key number for Satoshi Nakamoto in Gematria. We have 55 in multiple ciphers right there. Esoterically, 55 is two fives, which conceals the number 25 within it, and 25 is one of our key codes for this year here in 25. It used to be the Hebrew year that added up to 25. We've had Rosh Hashanah since, so that's no longer the case, but a majority of this year has been 25 energy, and it still is, technically, until we have New Year's, of course, in the Gregorian system, January 1st, 2026. So from here until then, I believe this 25 code is very powerful, which means two fives is 55. The power number 55 is equally as powerful. And speaking of 25, we have the ticker symbol BTC giving you 25. And we're here talking about crypto. And crypto is 25 in Gematria, and also it's 97. 97 is the 25th prime number. So lastly, we're in the Year of the Snake, and the snake is the serpent, and serpent also equals 97 in the same cipher as crypto. 97 again is your 25th prime number. And lastly, to go even deeper, lastly, consider that November starts with the prefix novem. So we're talking about November. Novem in Latin means 9. And the following day will be the 7th. So we have Novem for 9 and 7. That's your 97 code. And we were just talking about the 97 tied to the serpent. So this is epic. And the fact that it's right there around the supermoon on November 5th in the sign of Taurus, the bull, believe this is something worth bringing up, especially with the fact that we just had recently Bitcoin hit a new all-time high on a full moon. Oh, and one more thing to mention about this November being the true 9th month in the system. Consider that the full moon is on the 5th day of that month, so you'd have the 9-5 code, 95, and Satoshi Nakamoto's birthday, which is on the 5th of April, is the 95th day of this year. So it couldn't align more perfect than that. So I think that this pattern that we've just reviewed, it's now best to kick off the technical analysis portion of today's podcast with reviewing the crypto market cap charts to get an overview of the entire asset class, and then we'll quickly review the stock market as well as a quick recap of gold and silver. I'm sure you'd all appreciate that, so that we can get a broad overview of the entire market as a whole. So our mastermind community here can have a thorough outlook on these markets as well as the setup for a very, very important week ahead. So let's get over into the total crypto market cap chart also called total. Going to be zooming out, and best thing to do in situations like this is actually just zoom out. So I'm going to hide everything. Zoom out, everybody. So we have the last cycle peak in November 2021. We have Bitcoin having a lot of chop over here in the Q2, early Q2 timeframe of 2025, back testing all this work we put in here in this horizontal trading range, bouncing above, getting back into this resistance level, and then also finally breaking out one leg higher. This whole thing that we're seeing is very similar to how 2017 cycle was, where Bitcoin just had new all-time high after new all-time high with these 20 to 30%, in some cases 40% corrections along the way. And what we see right here with this recent liquidation event and the buyback that we've gotten so far is that we've just backtested this area over here that we were kind of struggling with before we broke out deeper into price discovery. And now when I zoom in, you can see that we have yet to fill that area out since. So we did get a little bit of a backtest over here, a higher low, kind of just a double tap at the bottom, started to look like a W breakout. The market maker knows that every crypto trader analyst that has, a million followers out there, they're all teaching you this shit. They're all telling you to leverage trade, and they're telling you to, buy the breakout on the W's or short the M's. This is like, it's not wrong stuff to teach, but it's coming from the top people, right? I'm not going to say names, and maybe they're honorable, maybe they're doing their best. I don't know. I don't really care. I've got to focus on myself and my community here. But what I'm trying to tell you is when they see setups like this and everyone is starting to talk about it's going to be a bullish breakout, it doesn't stop them from just doing a quick liquidation. The thing is, though, is what will this look like in 2 weeks? What will this look like in 2 months? You might not even talk about this shit ever again. It might just be a historical moment and we just look back at it like it is what it is. So I'm just saying that because in moments like this where they have a massive liquidation ritual leading into a weekend, which gives all retail investors who are solely in crypto this like depressing weekend, and then they hit you with positive news on a Sunday, and then they hit us with chop for the next week, and then 2 weeks after it's like nothing even happened. This is kind of how they like to do it. This is what happened back in February. This is what happened in March. This is what happened in many of the past liquidation rituals of 2017, as well as the 2020 cycle. So it's nothing really new. The magnitude of the amount of money that was wiped out is what's setting records. But all in all, the thing that occurred, it's not weird. So I just want to get that across. And I'm sure many of you veterans over here in our community already know this. So as market cap grows in general, of course the liquidations will be bigger. So that's all we're dealing with. Now getting back to this, when zooming out, we can see that we're still holding structure. There's really nothing to get super worried about at this time. I would want to quickly look at where the 21 weekly is on a couple of these charts, and you can see that we've swiped through everything, but we're back above the 13 EMA already, man. Closing here would be very good, and not having the bearish engulfing candle, of course, would also be great. So just for those who are unaware, bearish engulfing would pretty much sit at the 13 EMA, which, by the way, that's in a very precarious zone. So if they were to push us right below that into the close, that also wouldn't even bother me, because this is all shit that everyone's looking at too. So this is why we got to be cautious when we give a lot of energy to TA and this sort of stuff. It's not that it's right or wrong, or it's not that it's invalid or it doesn't work. It's nice to have the knowledge and the wisdom, but you got to understand that they just hit us with an isolated event that was tied to a narrative. So they have us in their talons right now, and everybody's emotional. Everyone's getting dramatic, right? So TA works for sure. The esoteric applications we're using absolutely work, but you got to understand this liquidation ritual was over in like an hour. Like, this is very, very coordinated, quick moves, and it does leave this weird residue in our charts. It does leave these ugly tails to the downside, but generally all that matters, and I'll wrap up this stream of consciousness with saying this, all that matters is the macro closes. So by the monthly, this could all be like, look, we're over, we're neutral again on the monthly. This is fucking nuts. Okay, so these things happen quick, but all that matters is trend. Trend is your friend, and don't go against it. Now, we're buying back a little quickly, in my opinion. And I don't like to see that either. So I can't be giving too many definitive calls at this time and like what the immediate short term will turn out to be. Because as I said or hinted to a little bit ago, usually after these major liquidation events, we chop sideways a little bit. So it wouldn't be weird if we had a week of sideways. And when we look back at the past two iterations of these examples, it did take about a week or so. And then after about 2 weeks, we were pretty much recovered. And in this case, 4 weeks later, we were onto new all-time highs. So, this is absolutely wild stuff. How quickly things can turn around. So, total market cap looking sideways. It's looking sideways. Now let's move over to total 2. Total 2, on the other hand, we did break structure on this daily close. Again, not so fair because it happened on a Friday, and it was all of what happened during that liquidation ritual. Here we had a little bit of a bottoming structure, and we can tell that because this buyback that we're getting right now in total 2 is absolute madness. And it's probably a majority of ETH. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that ETH dominance looks pretty crazy right now. Where are we at? Boom. Yeah, almost 5 fucking percent. So big. And we'll get to Bitcoin dominance in a minute. But ETH popping up like this makes total 2 look like this. So again, kind of similar situation. Let me go to the weekly, pop out a little bit. We have, really clear resistance here and like a triple top situation. And you know what this reminds me of? This is like if you took the silver chart and you compressed it. So we have here the all-time high for silver back in 1980. Just imagine, guys. Just imagine. Here's 2021 for crypto, but this is 1980 for silver. Here is the last time silver hit $47. I don't know, was it in 2008 or some shit? And then here was the start of the breakout in 2025. So now let me go over to the silver chart and show you what the hell I'm talking about. Go to the monthly. Boom. So here, 1980. You have again here in it was 2011. And then we have recently. So you see these two very like a major space between the double top and then a much shortened space between here. And now we're just starting to break above. So now let's go back to total 2. We're going to go to like a weekly now. And you see what I'm talking about. Same sort of deal. Double top, major washout, buyback, and now we're just struggling here to enter true price discovery. And what would be the best time for them to liquidate us? Well, when we're starting to get near price discovery moment, right? That would be the best time for them to do something like this. This is very normal. Also, they love to do this before breakouts. So you always see lows before you see the push to the upside. It's boring and low before we reverse. So right now we've done nothing to invalidate structure, in my opinion, overall. Total 3, same story. It's probably literally the same story as well, very much similar to the silver chart. And I believe silver and the altcoin market will probably be breaking out in harmony together. So I like what I see, and this is nothing to get super worried about until, again, we invalidate structure. So if we were to look at the weekly chart, for example, and we were to start closing weeklies like below 700 billion, then I'd probably start getting a little worried, if I had to be completely honest. Although we did have this rally up into March 2024, when we broke above it into December 2024, we back tested it on the tariff crash, and then we had this nice W breakout, back testing it again with the higher low right there in late June, since breaking out. And now this is looking like it really is testing us. It's testing everyone who's looking at a chart for sure, and it's testing the people who aren't, because of what just happened a couple days ago. Whether you know TA or don't know TA, whether you're leverage trading or not leverage trading, I mean, you probably saw some major changes in your portfolio. I think at one point, I forgot what percentage of I think my portfolio was down like 40%. And then as of today, it's completely different vibe. So that was pretty wild to see 50% of XRP's market cap get wiped out that rapidly. I mean, how is that even possible? How is that possible? If people can't even sell, how is it all going away? What's going on here? So yeah. Anywho, we're here now. That's all that matters. You made it through one of the most epic liquidations in history. Congratulations, you're still alive, I hope. No jokes, by the way, because I've heard there's some people that, unfortunately, money is the only thing that matters to them, and that's what they put as the pinnacle of life. Don't be that guy. There's a lot more to life than money. But what we're looking at right here with total 3, not too bad, but of course it will progressively look worse as we remove the higher market cap plays, as this is way more speculative, and that's where we saw the most damage in the altcoin market. So total 3 in general, holding the $1 trillion level, that looks pretty good. This week will likely be a bearish engulfing candle, but nothing structurally off. I mean, sure, we could start drawing trend lines and say this and this and this, but like after you have that much damage in the market, for it to even rebound as much as it did in just 48 hours is miraculous. So we're in that weirdness. If this would have happened on a Wednesday, I think things would it would be a lot easier to determine the technicals. Let's look at others. So yeah, others, again, pretty much holding this consolidation range that's been sideways going back to Q1 of 2024. So we're here in Q4 of 2025. The speculative altcoin market here is very indecisive, right? And that's because Bitcoin hasn't peaked yet. It takes Bitcoin peaking and Bitcoin dominance rolling over for others' market cap to really do its thing. And that's always how it goes. It's just lower down the risk curve. You guys have probably heard this a million times. So as we're seeing things like Binance, Solana, Ethereum, a couple of plays that I'll have in my portfolio that we'll review with you in a moment. Once those top out for the cycle, then it's the much more speculative stuff that takes a ride to the upside. So what we see right now is ETH in general looking pretty damn good. I mean, it's back at 4,100. We have Binance still in all-time high territory. I mean, fucking look at this. On a weekly close, we're going to have a new all-time high for Binance. You know, these are not signs of the end, in my opinion. So others, not a whole lot to comment on. Again, I think it will be how does next week go? That'll really help us a lot with determining and confirming how everything is likely to play out. Remember, it wasn't until Monday, April 7th, that all the tariff drama got concluded with a major move down. And I think I don't know if we'll go lower than where we've already gone. Like, I think that's too much, at least not in the immediate short term. In a bear market, sure, we'll go lower than this. But like, as for next week, I think there could be some room for some fuckery to the downside, you know? Get used to that kind of stuff after a major washout. It just is what it is. Like even here, we see this August 5th washout, and then we had a nice rebound, but then we revisited it. And then after revisiting it, we still had a little bit of chop before the final impulse up. And then we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight weeks of green. We see this kind of thing happening all the time. So just be on the lookout for that. And for those people that are trying to revenge trade using leverage, like, I don't know how many more times I need to tell you, stop using leverage. This is not worth it right now. Like, this is the worst time to use leverage, is in the final phase of the bull run. And you know you're in the final phase of the bull run when Bitcoin's in price discovery. That should be like the most basic way to explain it. If Bitcoin's in price discovery, stop fucking leverage trading. Okay? Like, it's as simple as that. There's times to leverage trade, but you should be a professional before getting involved in this. You should be spending a lot of time researching, learning how to do TA on your own. You should not be copy trading. You should not be following somebody else's trades. All of that's going to get you destroyed. Okay? So this is a very big reason why I don't offer a copy trading service, why I don't offer a staking serve bot, trade, none of that. It's all scam. It's all scam. All right. Learn how to become self-reliant in these markets. Learn how to trade. And biggest part of trading with leverage is risk management, which clearly a lot of people didn't have on October 10th. So this washout has pretty much revisited similar levels that we had back in July. And that's something now that I need to take a moment to show you all. The fact that what we just saw, I'm going to go back to this chart, was pretty much everything that pumped here into July, we revisited the breakout. So if you go here to before the pump started into July 2023, this October correction revisited the breakout. Here, we have this major pump up into July, and you see here, we've revisited where it was breaking out. Then you go over here, you have July breaking out, and then you have us revisiting the breakout level. I think a lot of altcoins that we're about to review in a moment will have that same vibe. So it's a pattern of we have a July pump, and then we trade and chop sideways all the way until October. We back test the breakout of July, and then we go up in November. That's what's been the trend for pretty much all of the past 2 years. And that was also sort of the trend at the end of the last couple of cycles too, with Bitcoin topping in November of last cycle and December of the cycle before that. So I think it was November we had a major shakeout in 2017, but we had so many 2017 corrections. Now, I don't want to take up too much more time. Clear that others is probably the most manipulated part of the story. So take that, analysis, or take what you're seeing in those charts with a grain of salt for now. We need to see how this weekly close comes in and how the market reacts on Monday. Now we want to quickly look at Bitcoin dominance, because in minutes, it literally rampaged to almost 64%. So it went all the way up to 63.5% as everything else was crashing. And then now it's come back right to where it was last week when Bitcoin was pretty much hitting the all-time high at 59.5%. Can you spell manipulation slowly with me? I'm not going to do that. This is crazy to see these sorts of things. So just keep in mind that this is obvious manipulation here. We have Bitcoin dominance skyrocketing up to 64% and then coming all the way back down 48 hours later to the same level that it was just on Thursday before the Friday ritual occurred. It's like a nothing to see here sort of thing. Okay, so just keep this in mind that we are still on track for seeing 57% Bitcoin dominance and further to the downside. And ideally, we would want this 55% dominance into early December. I would imagine that would align with that. So Bitcoin likely hitting a major move into the 47th week of the year around the November new moon. We've talked about this many times now. This is what happened in the last cycle. And we're keeping our mind open to the December new moon for Bitcoin. Given where Bitcoin dominance is at that time, it'll help us to determine that. And again, Q1 2026 is becoming more and more likely to be the case of a major top for the altcoins because of the rotation this time around. Will probably not be as it was in the last two cycles. In the last two cycles, they were much different from each other, actually, where we had in 2017, 2018, it was happening much quicker, whilst in 2021, it took months to develop, like many, many months. So here we are in October. If this flash correction was the orchestrated event to wash out retail before sending us into alt season, then we still have quite a bit of time before the February solar eclipse. So let me quickly show you where that would align with to today. Let's go to tomorrow, the 13th. That's 4 months. So that's plenty of time, again, for us to have that January new moon timeframe top 3 months. I mean, it's still in alignment with what I was sharing in the last podcast. So now let's quickly review the stock market just so we can see what's going on there. And then we'll look at a gold, which is crazy to see precious metals closing again, all-time highs. Now, this is where things get interesting. It's clear that the entire market got wiped out on last Friday. I mean, there's not too many examples of the NASDAQ having a 3.5% single candle to the downside. So this is pretty dramatic stuff. But we also have here in this time frame of October, when we look at the fractal, from 1965, the year of the wood snake, we did reach a major top, and then we had this big correction in the middle, and then we did a double top. So I'm not sure if it's going to align something like this. And this would, of course, be very devastating too, to have another major move to the downside. Or we just take this as this move right here. You see, I know it's hard to see, but it's a noticeable move right there. And then the continue up It doesn't need to be exact. Just the fractal overall is showing us that we should be continuing to the upside all the way until potentially late November. And given the pattern that we saw for 1965 moving into 1966, it would actually be something more like this, where we see the top coming in January before the major correction and the bear market. Now, this paints a different picture. So it's not the perfect thing to copy. Again, the markets are much different here in 2025 than they were in 1965, but it was pretty amazing to see. 47 days after the S&P topped, we had the market crash bottom just like we did in 1965. It took the same amount of time to get to the low of 1965 as we did here in 2025 from the yearly top at the time. And then the recovery has been effectively the same since, if not more bullish. But when we zoom out and we see that this blue trend line was marking a support in early 2024, then again in Q2, then again here Q3, followed by the major correction dump into the tariff crash, and then coming right back up to the same trend line and seeing resistance on it, followed by this major correction here, it does feel fishy. It feels like a very weird, it feels like a very weird time to do this, given how everything was going and this one little tariff scare is being really dramatically reacted to by the market when we've already been kind of used to tariff bullshit, right? Like, wasn't back here in April or March, Trump was talking about like 300% tariffs against China? Like, it just started to sound silly. And now here we are talking about it again, and it's enough to justify this sort of sell off. Like, I don't believe in that. So obviously this could also be about the FOMC minutes, like something happening with the Fed. We know next year we'll have a new Fed chairman. I think his name is Atkins. I'm not sure, but needless to say, this is kind of like overreactive vibe to something that's not that big of a deal, honestly, and something that we all have been sort of used to. So I don't believe in this whole thing. Like, everybody was speculating to get out of the market now just because of that. But October crashes are not weird. Technically, we've seen this happen many times in October. Big market crashes. Would be different if this was the start of one this time around, in my opinion. But again, we'll have to see how this goes. Do we get a Black Monday tomorrow? I don't think so. I believe even Trump floated out something today that sounded quite positive. So with where we are now, we're effectively trading into price discovery, and we would have still some levels below us to consider as potential support. Like here on the NASDAQ, we have about 23,500, this cluster right here, which was a little bit of chop, back testing this major not resistance, but this major fib level that we effectively finally hit. And then once we got above, we back tested twice and then continued. So very, very interesting times to see this volatility coming in all on a single day. Like the type of stuff that usually takes many days to unfold. This happened all at once. Not only for regular markets, but here for the crypto market. And then also remember in 2020, during the C19 crash, it was on Friday the 13th, a Friday that we had the lows. So same situation here with crypto. It wouldn't be weird, for example, if we open up tomorrow and we're back at like 24,700 or 24,800 for the NASDAQ. Like if they were to do some shit like that, that wouldn't be weird. They've done this many times before. Scare everyone into a weekend, and then Monday it's completely happy days again. So let's move on to the gold chart really quickly. All right, damn. Yeah, I mean, pretty good big move on Thursday, the 9th, but the 10th closed off very strong. Funny enough, we were up 1.08%. That's in alignment with the date that we had because October is the 8th month in the system. Like an octagon has 8 sides, and it's the 10th month. So you have the 10th day, excuse me. You have 10, 8, 108. Just something to point out. Yeah, I think gold's going to hit 4,700. 4,700 gold before Chinese New Year. That'd be crazy. That's a little too much. I don't think that's possible. Let's see. I would love for that to happen though. 17%. That's possible, bro. 17%. I believe it. 127 days from now, that'll be lit. No, but seriously, I mean, that's possible. Why not? We went up 20% in 50 days here. That'd be major though. If they push us all the way up into the year of the horse, 4,700 gold, and then just the massive wipeout, back to like 3,000 an ounce into 2026, late 2026. But gold looking very good. I mean, it's just continuing on its price discovery posture. And then we have here, we're seeing silver concretely close candles at new all-time high. And we have a weekly all-time high candle close. This is history. Yep, this is history. So this is price discovery is official for silver. Bi-weekly candle also, I believe, just closed. Yes, it did. So by the bi-weekly candle also closed. This is looking fantastic. So I think silver is on its way to $60 pretty soon. Now let's get quickly through Bitcoin because we spent quite a bit of time talking about the general thesis for Bitcoin with this move. But I just want to see, we're on the bi-weekly close today. That's kind of fucked up, but if this could become a bullish engulfing candle by the Lord's magic and wizardry, that'd be amazing. $115,400 Bitcoin. So that means Bitcoin would have to go up like 600 more dollars from here, and we could do it. That would make whatever happened on Friday look a lot less scary for the weekly open. And generally on the bi-weekly candles, we've been really struggling between like 110K and 120K. So we've yet to concretely break out into true expansion on Bitcoin, just because going all the way back to July, we've been stuck on our bi-weekly closes at around 117K. And that's also not weird with the 117 number, because Bitcoin equals 117 in the reverse cipher in Gematria. But generally, this major wake to the upside is not the nicest thing to see. That looks toppy, but we're still green generally. So getting this big buyback is also kind of now neutralizing it, if I could share my thoughts. Let's zoom out a little bit here, and I just want to look at some of the moving averages to get an idea. Okay, well, we had the wolf cross to the upside. We had a back test on the 200s. That's very nice to see too. So nothing weird there. We haven't even gotten close to the 200s on the 2-day, but we are now like, okay, this is good. I like this. We're looking at the 3-day chart now. We haven't interacted with the 200s in a long time. Again, like if we start closing below the 200s on the 3-day chart, we already know we're in a bear market pretty much. But what we're seeing here is nice back test at the end of September on the 55 simple moving average on the 3-day, and we've bounced here. Getting back above the 8 simple moving average would be nice, and that also is today's close, so I don't think that's possible, but gives you a little bit of an idea of how we haven't really invalidated anything. It's just perfectly normal. Look at this. We have the 8 simple moving average sitting right about where we're trading, about 115K on Bitcoin. So closing above that would be great. Not having this be a bearish engulfing candle, which would be below $111,400. We're looking at a very nice buyback here. So I'm going to say we're neutral on Bitcoin right now. It's very indecisive generally, but the buyback is strong. Let's look at ETH. Probably the same story. So ETH is now like the buyback here. It's always going to be more extreme. But what I like is on the daily, we tapped on the 200 EMA. That looks very good. Also, if I zoom out, you're going to see something I talked about in my market update, where we had 1, 2, 3 major tops. We were holding that as a support. If we didn't get this liquidation flash crash, I think we would have still been holding generally and back testing a level that was needed to be back tested. And generally, the fact that we bounced off of this 200 EMA is looking very solid. So we would like to see ETH back above 4,700. Funny enough, it's this 47 code again. Like we're getting resistance at $4,700 ETH. Like how weird is that? So they're just fucking with us by the code. Getting above 4,700 would be big. But for right now, we're at the lower end of this range, but we haven't invalidated anything. Now, XRP, this is like preposterous. Is that the right word? Did I say it right? Preposterous? I don't know. What do I know? Look at this. Binance is a trash exchange. Like, I'm so glad I stopped using it 2 years ago. This is bullshit. 77. I'm not being emotional right now. I'm just like, this is sad. This is sad. 77 cents on the Binance chart. What the actual fuck? That's crazy. Okay, here on total crypto aggregate, we're looking at about $1.37. Unbelievable. Now we're right back into the horizontal trading range that we were in for the past 315 days. So remember, when we first broke out bullish from November, you see we went straight to this level that we're trading at right now. So this isn't so scary. If we started closing below $2 on this flash crash and kept closing for the next 2 days, that would be pretty fucked up. But the buyback and where we got back to is not weird. But there's definitely a major discrepancy here between what we saw with the wipeout of market cap and I don't know, man. Is Ripple just dumping too? Wouldn't be. We've heard the story. We know what's going on. You guys know what's going on. They're dumping on us. But anyways, man, coming back to what I was telling you a little bit before about the July pump and then revisiting it in October. So we have here, we pumped in July and then we revisited the breakout area in 2023. Here we jumped up in July and then we revisited the breakout area actually during October 25th. A week later, we came back to the same level and then it was just a straight line breakout after that. So I did kind of show you guys a little bit of a graph of how this could turn out right here. I showed you two options. God, this fucking wick destroys all the charts. So I showed you two options, one of which was a backtest here into 62 cents followed by launch. And then the other was also showing you just this sideways chop with eventually a backtest around 260. Coming in like early November and then recovery from there. So why was I saying that? Well, because we didn't get the major move that I was anticipating in August, then I thought, well, we're just mimicking what we did last year. And that's what we did last year. We just chopped and chopped and chopped until November and then we lifted off. So that's kind of my thoughts here on that. Also right here, if you see, we had the C19 crash and then we were boring. We made it to the first week of November and then we lifted off. And if it wasn't for all this SEC case against Ripple bullshit, that would have been the start of the alt season, like technically, right? So, but look, it's October, mid-October, you've revisited at the beginning of November. So we have over here, we have October, beginning of November, pump. So this is why I drew this out, the squiggle line, with coming back into this area in the beginning of November, because this is not weird for XRP to do this. Now you guys understand. Here we have October, the beginning of November-ish, and then we took even a little bit longer. But still this sideways, boring as shit price action, and then we get release. So I think getting bearish on XRP just because of this and because of everything that just happened recently is kind of like you're jumping the gun here, because we've seen these liquidation events happen right before XRP specifically breaks out and does its biggest move of the cycle. So I'm not saying that to just make you guys feel better. I'm saying that because this is like literally what happened. I think there's even like a chart circulating around that's gotten popular over the last 48 hours that shows this. A major liquidation event in like, I forgot, November, December of 20. Let me try to find it. I'm not sure if it'll show in these charts. Nor is it important because you guys have probably seen it. And okay, right here. Again, on the fucking Binance chart, trash. Basura. So yeah, we see December 6th, just major wipeout, and then like a week later, it starts a rally. So if I was to zoom out, let me go to like a 5-day chart, turn off the noise. Wow, holy fuck. This thing went to a fraction of a penny. Can we just terminate Binance? Can we give Binance to like Gaza or something? Sorry, bad joke. Yeah, so this is silly, but this I think was the date of that big liquidation event. It's only showing up on a couple exchanges, but at the time, it was a big deal. Yeah, they're like super similar. Like right here, there's also a big one right before the breakout, major liquidation event, and then just continues. And we all know the C19 trap. That was best buying opportunity of all time. Okay, let's move on now to this crazy list of altcoins that I have. It's going to take some time. We're about 1 hour into today's podcast. It's going to be weird because every single chart we look at is going to have these wicks to the downside, so bear with me, but let's do our best. So we're here on XLM, and by the way, we're not going to do every single altcoin that I usually do. I think we'll cover about 15 of them or so because a lot of them do look similar. And there's just no point of going through each and every one if the charts are so similar. So keep that in mind. Now, I had this fractal here because this was a fractal that was, for the most part, playing out pretty nicely, and it has a release into like the beginning of November. So I'll leave that there. Not that I use this fractal to determine like what's going to happen with perfect precision. Again, at the end of the day, it's just a fractal. But generally, like they are pretty interesting when you see how there's been mimics of certain things, just like this right here, where we're repeating the October 10th, October 11th bottom. So, for the sake of this, though, and to not confuse the hell out of everybody, I'm just going to lower that fractal so we can see what's up. Are we getting a little bit of a touch here? Not as important, in my opinion. I'm just going to delete that. Look at things from their most simple vantage point. So again, we had a breakout and now we've yet to fill any of this area pretty much between the breakout level all the way till right here where we're trading at right now at around 34 cents, 34 to 35 cents. And we saw a touch here, a touch here, a touch here. And then finally everything gets liquidated. And now we've come back to fill out a majority of this level. Now, Stellar Lumens was one of the best performing from that July into the July pump. One of the best at the time. So a lot of coins were just coming back to retest the late June into early July pumps. This is even kind of better in that case because if you bought any of the lows of June and the lows of April, you're still up. You're still up by about 60%. So that's not so horrible. Again, XLM is usually going to give a better ROI than something like XRP, for example, but we're kind of splitting hairs here. It's all about your entry levels. Now, when I zoom out, what I'm seeing from this fib pull swing high back in 2021 down to the swing low of December 2021, we're holding this start of the rally chop, like, and we're performing very similarly to the last cycle, where once we expanded, we had a major washout followed by a pump, and this 1, 2, 3, 4, technically, what I believe 40 to 50% crashes were something you had to experience as an XLM investor. Look at this shit. That's 40% corrections on the way up to topping out. So just keep that in mind. We've already had a major washout. We just had another. And if we were to measure from here down to the swing low, that was a 45% correction. So this is not new. This is not something that's never happened before. This has happened before for sure. And if we zoom out to the last cycle, you're going to see something very similar. And I've talked about this before with you guys, how I feel like we're here. Where this move right here is this move, and this move right here is the move that we're completing. It's just extended. It's taking longer. And then the next thing will be the initiation into all of this, which, interestingly enough, started in the end of October, transitioning into November of 2017. So is November 2017 going to go similarly to how November 2024 went? And for how it's going to potentially go for us this time around? Also, we could see November 2020, it was a major release in energy as well. And we even went higher into December. The same way here, we also went higher into December, into the very beginning of January. Here also, we went up into the very beginning of the year as well. So I believe that this is kind of where we're at right now. We're finishing off this. It's just extended out a lot more. And for me, this is nothing weird. I think even the fact that we got bought right back up to the support level is a great thing to see. So we've back tested the W now of the neckline, and I think this is ready to go. Yeah, and this first initial move gets you back up to this resistance level around 53 cents, and then a macro closure above 56 cents. So like a weekly close above 56 for XLM. And then I believe you're on to new all-time highs after that. So about 80 cents or 2 weeks or 3 weeks after it could close a macro candle close above 56 cents. Now let's move on to Hedera H bar. Very violent washout, at least here on this exchange that it's taken from, because you can see differently from XLM, where the wick was higher than this W breakout. This went much lower. It dug deep, but we got bought back up to the pretty much same level. So this right here, clear manipulation, it's happening on every single altcoin all at the same time. And this buyback now is pretty much looking identical, 2 charts apart. Delete that. One thing to say though is we've had 2 tests on the 0.5 fib. I'm not going to count this. And then we've sort of been bull flagging through this golden pocket territory. So we got stuck at the top of the golden pocket of the 786 and we've come back to the 618. And because of this liquidation event, we're still, within reason of that territory. And ideally, we would like to see this recover back up to around here at like 23 cents. Some of these weekly closures that we started to hold on to before keeling over. But if you wanted to just give yourself a simple number to consider, if you're an investor in H bar, it would be 25 cents. So getting back above that 702 fib, that'd be my outlook here. Getting back above that 702 fib would be like the back test on the W. And then you would have your continuation likely into the 888 fib shortly after that. So this is like what I would anticipate in the November timeframe. And you see how October was like dug deep last year too for H bar. So we did have this really arduous sell-off all the way down into October, pivoting, followed by this release in November. So that's fascinating as well. And I do believe we have an FOMC meeting to finish off this month. So that would be like perfect timing as well if they were to do something similar. Where like alts, again, being the most speculative, we need news for them to float out that allows for the most speculative stuff to run. And of course, H bar will be part of that list just by proxy of being an altcoin. So I'm looking at this as a very positive play, and I would actually, if I had money to put in the market, so for anyone who's like still looking to invest, I would not mind putting some into H bar or XLM right now, personally. As opposed to XRP, I would not want to at this time, but just because of where it's at in price. But with regards to XLM and H bar, I would. Now let's move on to Aerodrome. This was a newer investment for me. It's like one of my latest venture capital positions, which by the way, at the end of this list, I will be getting into a coin that I might be picking up, might be making a new investment in. We'll see. But this Aerodrome chart, it was looking very, very good. And of course, this liquidation event like kind of makes things a little weird, but it was this major trend line support that it was holding. We can clearly see this amazing parallel channel that was holding for Aerodrome all the way till it bottomed on April 7th, followed by the pivot. And then we were holding this rising support line in like a V-shaped recovery style all the way till we got to the golden pocket. And then that was the end. That isn't the nicest thing to see. So I'll admit, this doesn't make me so happy. I never like when things make it back up to these technical levels and then reverse. But what I will say is this is still in a major horizontal trading range, and also we haven't started breaking structure. So until this starts closing weekly candles below like 75 cents, this isn't anything to get super worried about. And a back test of the 0.5 fib after hitting the golden pocket is also not weird. It's just the fact that we've kind of been just chopping in this range for an entire year, getting pretty stuck. But Aerodrome's feeling like a good investment decision for me. based on my entry. I think this should be back above $1 very soon. And it's this level right here of about $1.50 above the golden pocket. And then that's what will send us into price discovery. And I think 350 will come shortly after that. So just that move right there, it's looking at about a 280% move. And then in the full blown alt season, I do see this $5 target being hit, and we could even make it all the way up to 880. So keep that in mind for those who are into aerodrome, because that would be a really nice move ahead. Like, we're talking about almost 800% from the current level that we're at. Not weird at all for an altcoin, by the way. This is very normal moves for the end of an alt season. We've seen how well this project did at launch, and since has held structure well. We have a lot of projects that actually go right back to where they started, notably Trump's coin. So, like, even the most famous man on earth can't keep a project together like that. Of course, that's by design, but the point that I'm bringing up here is this actually is tied to coin, and it will be a big and base. It'll be a big part of what's to come in this new world crypto, the Aquarian economy, in my opinion, based on my research that I've done. So let's move on, but I give you guys some nice levels to consider. We're having a look at reserve rights, which also got absolutely just milked. And it got right back up to its support levels that it was at June and March. So like I was telling you before, this June into July pump and then October coming back to retest the same levels, that's not weird. We've seen it happen before, and we just saw it happen now. Let me expand this chart out. This is what makes it look a little weird, is the fact that we were holding this support level, and then we broke through. And this breaking down also led to this massive liquidation event. So I wonder, you have over here this major liquidation event right here on RSR, followed by the buyback all the way up. And then we were moving up then into pretty much 10 days after, 2 weeks after, about 3 weeks after. So usually these bottoms are pivots. And this right here, I'm not sure if we're 100% ready to pivot out yet. It will probably take until the end of the month, until the first week of November. That's likely when I would anticipate that sort of pivot move. But generally, I would keep these trend lines because they definitely show key areas of interest. And right here, we have these major resistance levels right around December into January, somewhere around 3 cents into the 702 fib. And generally, when you can make it above those, you rapidly move up to the 888 fib, even in some cases, the prior all-time high. So we're looking at from this level right here up to the 888 fib is about 1,255%. Now, I would treat this project and Aerodrome as buying opportunities, and they would be venture capital positions. So this isn't something you want to put like all of your net worth into, of course, but like these are the type of late stage in the cycle accumulation projects that you could consider. Not financial advice, of course, but keep an eye on RSR, because I believe when this thing gets moving, it will definitely charge towards this golden pocket territory. Let's go over to Jasmy. Jasmy also looking very similar to RSR, where we have our bottom over here in June, we have our bottom over here in April, and since in October, we've come back to retest it. Disregard the wick, it's sort of irrelevant. And one thing that is a little bit troublesome over here is that we have all this support up until, so 1 year of support from February 2024 to February 2025, breaking below that support in March, and then getting rejected in May and July, sorry. So we really want to get back above this 2 cent level for Jasmy. Once it clears 2 cents, it will likely do what it does every time, where you see it moves from here 2 cents to the top, from here around 2 cents back to the top. It could happen very rapidly. So this recovery happening into the beginning of November, followed by, give it about 2 or 3 weeks up, and then it should look something like that, where it finally can clear in December, we could see over here a rejection, major rejection at the same 4 to 5 cent level. So this has been a level that Jasmy's been battling going all the way back to the bear market, which became much more noticeable in Q3, Q4 of 2022. But keep that in mind. This is the level to break. And I believe if we could get above that, we will soon after go straight to the 786. So from the current levels that we're at to the 786, it's about a 900% move. So think about that. This is one of those venture capital plays where a little goes a long way. So definitely not the most beautiful looking chart. It never was a beautiful looking chart, but there's been ROI in the process. Like going from this October 2023 bottom all the way up to what it did in June of 2024, that would have been a 1,200% gain. Could have had two opportunities to get out. December of 2024, 1,200% gain. So this project could definitely make some big moves if you buy it on a discount. And right now it is definitely on a discount. Now we're going over to Dogecoin. Doge looked like absolute shit a couple of days ago, and we've been bought back pretty heavily. I mean, I know this looks very messy, guys, but I did have another fractal at play here that I was keeping an eye on. Not so important for analysis because it's not really actual TA. Anyone who shows you fractals and uses that as their only form of TA, just be cautious because it's not TA. It's just copying fractals. But sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're fun. But yeah, today we're looking very strong on this buyback. I'm just going to extend this trend line a little bit so you can see what's going on, where we had a rejection over here in July, followed again in August. August broke through, mostly back tested right there. That would be a fair way to hold it. So we were back tested here, but then we had this wipeout and now we're back above it. So that's a really strong thing to see. And given the fractal, you know, we might chop here a little bit until, again, as I said, late October into the beginning of November. That wouldn't be weird at all. So I am banking a lot on Doge in this cycle. So trust me, when this big washout happened with how much XRP and how much Dogecoin I hold, that made my portfolio look wacky. You know, don't get me wrong, but here we are today, and we're pretty much trading at the same prices that we were at all of the supports of August, at all of the chop that we had back in May, and it's not been a huge change. And this is always what it looks like in all the altcoins leading into an alt season. We have, of course, isolated moves here and there, but it's like the Bitcoin show until it isn't the Bitcoin show. And right before the Bitcoin show comes to a conclusion, the Ethereum show begins, and also Binance. So we're seeing all of that basically is the case today. Binance is taking center stage. We see like Tron is doing really well. We see ETH is doing really well. Solana is doing pretty damn good too. All in all, these are the projects that do very, very well right before we move into an alt season. It's just Bitcoin has to like get through this final hoorah, you know? And also, Bitcoin's expensive right now. It's $115,000. You know, this is, if I told you back in 2017 when Bitcoin was $19,000 that we would someday soon have $115,000 Bitcoin, you'd be happy, but also you wouldn't really understand what the world would have to be like in order for that $115,000 Bitcoin to be the case. So you have today, the big difference in the world from now to 2017 is food prices are up 300 to 400% across the board. We have, look at the difference in the housing market. You know, everything is more expensive today. So just keep that in mind, right? Anywho, getting back to the point of this Doge analysis is I've bet a lot on Doge, and I'm definitely one of those people that would love to see this do well in this cycle. This is not a venture capital position for me, really. I don't remember what percentage of my portfolio it is exactly at this moment because everything is sort of like out of whack. I'll have to see how things look when everything equilibrates after some confirmations with the traditional markets opening. But generally, this will be in my top 4 positions behind Bitcoin, XRP. I guess technically it would be my 3rd. Yeah. So this is one of those things where staying focused and neutral whenever we get these big shakeouts is massively important. And right over here, you can see major washout. 53% before we had this major move to the upside. What did we just experience? This was apparently a 66% correction. For where we're at today, it's a 40% correction. Let's look back if this has happened in the past. Right here, 56% correction, 53% correction. That's a 70% correction. From this to there, that's a 65% correction moving up. This is kind of just the way altcoins are, guys. I know it's scary, but this is the way that it is. So I want to see. Okay, yeah, we did. I'm turning this off. So July pump came back to the same level in October. July pump came back to the same level in October. This is fucking wild, man. It's all an algorithm. It's all an algorithm. So yeah, this is fine for me. I'm not going to get too reactive to this just yet. We got to see how this closes up. So on the weekly, yes, not looking so amazing, but at the end, when all is said and done, into the monthly close, I think we'll have a much different picture. And I think if we could recover back to around 24 cents, this will look much more healthy. But generally, we're right there at about where this would start getting a little weird. We have 1, 2, 3 candles coming from back here already showing a lot of resistance between these two tops. We've got July and September. This also not the most confident breakout considering we returned right back to 15 cents, but it is nice to get these double bottoms for sure. This grind to the upside is very arduous. So these are the types of markets that you get right before you get expansion. I mean, look at the way Doge was grinding here. Boring as hell all the way till it just out of nowhere, boom. But you got to understand, like, this chopped in a 400-day range, barely moved. And then it had an absolutely epic, almost 10,000% move over the next year. But not without having this major washout of 80% in the middle. Same thing we just got over here. So I'm thinking if I had to turn everything off and just look at things for what they are, I think right here is the move we're completing now. Right before this next move up. So this rally over here is like this rally, and we're in the process of completing this whole thing. There's your C19 crash. There is your there's your tariff crash, C19 crash, tariff crash, chop, come down into October, November, and then release. And I would still imagine we get that $1 Doge likely in Q4 at the end of the year. Where are we at? Got Avalanche. I think on some exchanges, AVAX went down to like 7, right? Yep, $9. Unbelievable on that wick. Very similar to the Doge chart too, except with these lower highs. Alrighty. So Avalanche, this chart is, it's, you know what? Like what's hard with this podcast today as I'm looking at all of these altcoins is this recent wick kind of fucks everything up. It's almost like they wanted like to make TA like so much more complicated than it needs to be. I wish we could like delete these wicks. That'd be so helpful. Does TradingView offer this? Like, why even entertain this stuff? This is crazy. It just fucks all the data up. Anyways, This rejection right here at the zero point 0.5 fib happening at that pivotal moment in September does not look good, but we also saw a lot of this in the last cycle where we were getting all of these rejections right at this green line. That's why I held that green line across the screen, because then we had the major washout, which funny enough, it went to the same fucking level that we just crashed to. And then from there, we had a straight line breakout. So if you see like how bad it got before it went up 1,400% in 3 months, 4 months. So yeah, they like to wash everything out before they reset. And I think this AVAX chart here gives you like a very clean view. If I look at it with nothing else on the charts, we literally almost came back to the same exact level we had that flash crash. And then have mostly been bought up. Unbelievable. So generally, we are back in the like heart line of this horizontal trading range. If you were to mark it somewhere around here at like $40 and anything above $40 being more extreme, and then over here anything below like 14 or 15, anything below that being more extreme, we're like right there smack dab in the middle of that range, somewhere around 20 to 25. That means it's indecision. It's at fair value. And until the market gets very euphoric and greedy, this will stay sideways as well, along with everything else. So not too much to update on this particular chart that I haven't covered in other charts. Let's go over to XDC network. No, sorry. We're going to go over to Aave. Wow. Also unbelievable 60 fucking percent in a day. Mamma mia. You see it just destroys the whole chart. Anyways, so we have this big V-shaped recovery. I remember anybody who bought the March correction was looking pretty good. This was up almost 200% in that time frame. Now we're kind of back to the July breakout area, the same thing that I was telling you a little bit ago. And generally, when you look at fibs, where are we at? We're right there in the golden pocket. We're holding, so this is great to see. This is nothing to get super worried about at this time. So we're right there in the 618, holding the golden pocket after this major move up to the 786 and back test of the 382. This is normal type altcoin behavior, but this looked very nice on Aave, excuse me, for quite a while until we made it up to the end of the summertime. Now right here, we're sort of trapped between the 702 and 618. So this needs to be decided on sooner than later. And I believe November is more likely to be when we'll get that clarity, given this recent flash correction kind of, what would be the best word? It sort of like stuns it's like when you get knocked out and you're on the ground and you're like looking around, like, it's just that phase effect. I forgot the word, but yeah, it's a little stunned right now. And that's typically why after you get these flash corrections, it takes like a week or so to get back up and understand, like, where am I, when you're seeing stars. So funny thing though, is this washout, the washout came right into that key level that I had on the 236. So they were hunting these levels for sure. For sure. But yeah, from the technical perspective, this isn't that bad. I think if we can clear the 786, so above 380 on Aave, we'll shortly move back up to 650. Like, I think maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. It shouldn't be that hard to get back to that. So that could all be very, very rapidly developing. I think during this time I've been filming, we've also had Bitcoin hit the 15,500 level. So that's very fascinating because I brought that up, how that was our bullish engulfing level. Let's go to XDC. All right, XDC coming back to this technical level of the 0.5 fib as well. Higher low, not breaking structure. Also the rejection on the 702 fib after the move up to the 888. That's a little troublesome. I would say that's not what you want to see, but I think this is the type of chop that we saw over here before we had expansion. So spending a bit of time around the 0.5 fib and the golden pocket before the final move up, which perfectly settled at the 1618 fib. at the golden ratio. So I would, of course, love to see XDC make it all the way up to this 83 cent level. That'd be fucking amazing. I think even 50 cent zone would probably be pretty hefty move. But I also think that depends a lot on what will happen with XRP. Even though they're not necessarily associated, they will always be in the eyes of like investors in crypto Twitter and general XRP army and people that are interested in that stuff, like Stellar Lumens, HBAR, Algo, etc. So their eyes are on XDC. That's probably the only people that really look at XDC. Therefore, whatever they're excited about, it all kind of just happens in a big crescendo. That's why November 2024 went this way for XDC, XRP, XLM. You know, it all had a very similar structure. And today the charts also all look very similar too. But I would consider this venture capital, maybe not one to bank on so much unless it's easy for you to buy and sell. A lot of people can only really get this on a couple exchanges. So do your own homework about what would be the best exchange for you to get it on. I personally hold it on Uphold, and it's one of the few investments that I hold on Uphold. I think I also have some Theta on Uphold, but it's not my favorite exchange either. No offense, I have no problem with them, but generally I try to not use Uphold for my personal big crypto moves. But it's nice to have if there's some altcoins they carry that you don't have access to on your preferred exchanges. So kind of like a backup plan. Let's move on to Algorand. Speaking of, Algorand also bounced right back to where it was on the weekly close, on 2 weekly closes ago. So it's holding the range, nothing too chaotic here. And this is a wild card because we're trading still around the C19 buyback. I don't remember how much Algorand I hold, like maybe like 1 or 2% of my portfolio. It's a very small amount. But after the C19 reset, which was, in my opinion, very similar to the tariff reset into early April, and what I think this clearly is right now, this is like a leverage trading reset. It's a leverage reset. Those are the type of things that lead to these spring effects. So even though you see that we made this lower high in February, and then it almost feels like the C19 crash is what led to the higher high a couple of months after. Kind of interesting how that works, right? But then we still had to go through this big sell-off into early November before the true release into alt season. So that's why I'm feeling that this is probably the case this time around too, like this early November pivot. I've said it so many times throughout today's podcast, and it's not a first. I actually said this when I was doing the XRP analysis with you guys when I drew out this line right here of that idea. So not the most to say about Algorand because the charts are all very similar to the prior ones we've looked at. Let's look at Solana. Oof. Okay, nice. Solana back testing this major trend line here right at the 888 fib. I actually like to see this. This is our first chart that's starting to look a little bit different. So we have now 1, 2, 3 major back tests, clean support trend line. I mean, it doesn't really get more beautiful than this. We have the bottom in December. We have over here June. We have here the release into October, again revisiting it and holding it nicely. So we're coming close to that moment where these other cryptos such as Solana and Ethereum take a run, which are crucial, I think, for kind of confirming the alt season. Once Solana and Ethereum start catching up to what Binance is doing, it'll be like undeniable, and then we'll have XRP follow. Or XRP can lead the way. It doesn't really matter what order things go in, but I suspect the only way that would be possible is if they craft up a very, very interesting narrative. Kind of like what they did back in, what was it, March or whatever, with the bullshit they tried doing with the crypto strategic reserve. And he leaked, Trump shared something about XRP and Cardano and ended up being fucking bullshit. But, that's how they play with people. So effectively, we could have something like that occur. I doubt it, though. I think it's going to be a more traditional move where we see ETH, Solana catching up to what Binance is doing. XRP will follow that, and then everything else will move as well. At least that's what we're hoping for. That's generally what's expected to happen based on seasonality and based on everything we've been covering today. And the fact that we had this liquidation come out of nowhere and it be like so clearly an inside job, I'm not lacking confidence in what I just said a moment ago. So Solana looking pretty damn good. Holding that 888 fib nicely. Of course, I would love to see expansion. And at this time, all expansion means is closing at a new all-time high. So if Solana can make it into $300, it will start to feel like the silver breakout, where we have this major high over here, a double top, followed by a shorter, cup and handle sort of formation to get you out of this major resistance, the triple top breakout. ETH is kind of dealing with the same shit as well. So these are all very similar in that way. And I think Solana will, after that, once it breaks above this 400 territory, it could quickly make it to 6. So I'm not sure how much higher I see Solana going in this cycle. I'd probably have to do some isolated exit strategy stuff for it. We'll get around to that though for sure at a later date. So we're gonna pivot away from these what I'm investing in specials into like exit strategy focused podcasts. I know you guys would appreciate that. Now let's move on to Chainlink. It's been some time since I've looked at Link. Also crazy. Oh my goodness, dude. What the hell? 60% on Link. Like, how is this possible for every single altcoin to lose that much value all at the same time while no retail is allowed on the exchange? Like, how? How is that possible? Who the fuck sold their Chainlink a couple of days ago? Like, it was silly. So manipulated. It's hilarious. So, interesting times. I think what we just saw right there, from a technical perspective at least, is a back test of this major fib level, the 0.5 fib. And we like to see this, especially when we start to stall out in the golden pocket. So we can see the initial rejection at the 618, major correction. Come back up, hit the 786, major correction. Come up, hit the 702, and now I guess we could call this a major correction. But this is the setup into confirming like true value in these later stages of the cycle before we go into what would be considered overvalued, right? Like an expensive link. All this sort of chop and shit that we deal with is quite normal. I mean, look at this. This is really fascinating. Look at this major washout that we have into December before it releases. So from that wick, how much was that, by the way, in a single day? 36% in a single day. But off that wick to where this went 140 days later was another 500% up. From an already crazy C19 crash up to here move. So the whole cycle all in all was a 2000% move for Link. Which, by the way, was already like anybody who got into Link back in the bear market of 2018 did a very good play. Because that was when Link was 22 cents. Today it's almost $20. And it's been holding structure since. So this has been a really good macro investment. Like similar to ETH. ETH is currently outperforming it. It's not felt the best this cycle, of course, unless you were just taking trades. But that's pretty much, I think, the story for every altcoin. You've been needing to trade them, not necessarily hold them, with some exceptions, right? I think like Caspa's probably still doing pretty well. I haven't looked at that chart in a while, but ETH in general is looking pretty good. Solana's looking pretty good if you bought the bear market. But yeah, let's wrap this one up. There's not a whole lot to say here. I think just clearing the 702 fib at around $27 is what's needed. Let's call it $28.50. I think above 30, and this will quickly move right back to the $50 range. So we're talking from here, not the biggest ROI available for it to get back to the prior all-time high, but generally I think $100 Link is on the table for this cycle, given the fact that we have a nice move up for the alt season. So this is one of those plays that maybe doesn't produce the most ROI, but it's a little bit quote unquote like safer in that way. I mean, I don't think we could say the safe word ever with crypto, especially look at what just happened. I can guarantee you nobody was selling their ETH. Nobody was selling ETH. Or sorry, the Chainlink. Nobody was selling Chainlink. Nobody was selling Chainlink. There's no way. This is all leverage. Let's go to Cardano. And also, who the fuck's leverage trading Chainlink? Like, even that sounds silly to say. All right, so back test on the 236 after this washout, got bought right back up, generally to the same range that we've been stuck at, 70 cents. So it's been like 50 cents to a dollar has been a lot of what Cardano has been dealing with since 2024, since the beginning of the year. It's all feeling very much like this, where we had the C19 crash, we recovered, and then we had some like last minute fuckery before a release in energy. We had the tariff crash in April, we had the tariff crash in we had the C19 crash in March. Bought back up with a peak in July, August, bought back up with a peak in August, coming down and having to deal with all this shit until November. Altcoins could take that extra time because Bitcoin has yet to top. So the more people entertain the idea of like a Q1 all-time high for altcoins, it does like align, you know, it definitely does align. And the fact that we can be changing the solar and the lunar cycles, which I'll need to make isolated content for in the future, but I've already expressed myself how I feel if last cycle we extended past the first lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, and this cycle I was confident that we would extend past the second lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, and we in fact did by having Bitcoin hit a new all-time high after the September 7th total lunar eclipse. That means that we have quite a bit of info now and data to make new updated decodes for the crypto lunar cycle and solar cycles, in my opinion. I know it's getting a little bit late in today's podcast, so it's hard to articulate all this stuff, but generally, this gives me a lot of data to work with. And we're to see another new all-time high for Bitcoin and expansion through the end of this month into early November. That would mean like, wow, this is really powerful stuff to be aware of. And it's like the waiting for the Bitcoin dominance rotation. The fact that we've waited this long, it makes me feel, well, what will the wait be like in the next cycle? Well, guys, I don't think there's going to be that next cycle like that. I think this is it. They will need to do what they just did in this single candle right there. They can do that whenever they want. And I think they just showed their power. How quickly, like if XRP can lose 50% of its market cap in 8 minutes, they can make all of this go to zero overnight if they wanted to. But it's not over yet. They want there to be this casino type vibe. And I can speculate as much as I'd like, but I'm feeling that this is the last cycle that they're doing this for. Getting, like, allowing us to play in this casino the way that we're playing in it. And this is why it's been so scary. This is why it's been so different in that way compared to the other times, where it felt like a little bit more confidence, even with higher prices. Right now we have Bitcoin at super high prices and people are discouraged. We have a lot of top altcoins at very high prices, but people are still discouraged. That was not how it was the last cycle. So here we are. Cardano chopping around this 70-cent level. I think expansion would be above $1. So getting clear of that dollar level, which will likely be in alignment with ETH going into price discovery and Solana breaking into price discovery, that's probably when you'll see ADA follow. Let's go over to VeChain. And we will also cover Vitho. VeChain, it looks silly. It wiped out of that whole level, but when we zoom in and we look at where we're just trading back to the same level that we've been dealing with over and over again, right there at around 2 cents. So all things considered, this has pretty much been holding this support in the middle of the 236 and the 0 spot fib extension. And the next major move would likely be in alignment with this major parallel channel, which I'm going to extend to the right. And you'll see that getting back into this parallel channel around January would still be around 8 cents. So given where we are now, getting back up, to 8 cents would be at 350%. And I see that right here around this 500% level is the 702 fib. Now, I got to be honest, guys, I think VeChain is not going to have as great of a cycle as it did last time. It's kind of old story, old news stuff. So I would be personally like getting out of it at much more conservative levels in this cycle. Last cycle, I, funny enough, did very, very well with VeChain. It was one of my best investments. I got out pretty much in this move up here. I was investing all throughout the recovery of the C19 crash, so getting in sub penny. Easily, I made about, I want to say 1,700, 1,800% on that move. So it did very, very well for me. And I kind of just made the rookie assumption that, well, if I did really well last cycle, then I must do really good this cycle too. Well, although I'm not like completely in the dumps with this one, it hasn't done anything this cycle. So you live and you learn. But I did not put all of my money in VeChain. I put about, I mean, I would assume around 5% or less of my portfolio in VeChain. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not hurting so bad. But I can't say that it's completely let me down considering its performance in the last cycle. So with that being said, you know, that's another learning thing too, how each cycle will definitely be different with these speculative altcoins, and you can't just like hope for the best every single cycle to anticipate they'll go the same way. Again, a big reason why when this cycle's over with, I will be redoing my investment thesis for the next cycle. I'll probably create a whole new course around it because that cycle I know will be different for sure, as I alluded to moments ago. So VeChain, I'm going to take profits most likely in a very conservative territory, probably somewhere like around 10 cents. And I'll, of course, cover that when we get there. But speaking of Vito, this now has started to break below structure, and I'm also feeling the same way on Vito. I will probably get out at a similar level of where it spiked up over here, probably around a penny. So I would say 10 cent VeChain, 1 cent Vito, very, very good exit. Again, this is about a 600% move, so I'm fine. If cutting something that I don't feel so great about at 500 to 700% gain is a problem to you, then I don't know what to tell you, because that's really good money. But generally, I've been saying this often, that I'm not banking on so many things to do the crazy, crazy new all-time high moves that we got like in the last cycle. But with where we're at now, again, kind of like here, really, really depressing. Like, look at this, late October, early November, really depressing low prices. And then once we saw Bitcoin push into price discovery one last time and alts, Bitcoin dominance started to tank, that was all through that January moment into early February. So we see that the move that it made from the low up to here in 110 days, 1,800%. Okay, so this could make a lot of ROI given that we enter an extreme greedy environment, which is what I'm anticipating is right around the corner. The last one will be Theta, and then we'll get into that new altcoin that I brought up. Oh wow, so Theta broke structure to the downside. This is pretty wild, man. Funny enough, though, this was the same territory that Theta was in, same fucking price before it went explosive too. So like, what's going on there? It's all revisiting the same prices as right before it had this expansion phase. I find that very interesting. Like, it's literally at the same level. So here you have October 22nd. You have October, let's zoom in. That's October 20th. And it stayed that way through the whole month of November. And then finally in December broke out. And then let's look at from that low that it's at right now to where it went. 2,000 fucking, almost 3,000%. Fuck. I mean, that would be legendary. That alone would be gnarly. So yeah, man, this is the type of stuff that happens in these expansion phases, and you see that it was over by March. So I mean, if they do an absolute identical mimic of that last cycle, then we're not far from that release moment. And then it'll be about like keeping track of RSI, keeping track of where everything's at with how overheated the market's getting. But you see, like, we got all the way up to about 95 RSI on the weekly. This is what I teach. Right now, we are at like, watch, like 40 or 37 RSI. Super low, bro. We're not anywhere near euphoria. Like, euphoria is when all altcoins, no matter what they are, they're all doing amazing. Like, the biggest shitcoin in the world does amazing during alt season. So, wow. Okay, so just keep this in mind. Like, theta's in an absolute rock bottom territory, which means it's an investment that you're holding on. Doesn't feel so good. But the jump up from here, somewhere around 500% to get to these automatic rally territories, and then anything breaking above that $4 level, and we could quickly get back to $8. And I would say the conservative investor wants to get out somewhere below 10, like right there. You wouldn't be missing out on too much if the best we do is a double top in the entire cycle. I mean, it's still almost 1,000% move from here. And if you were somebody who was buying around like the $1 level, then still, like, this is looking pretty good to get out around like $9 on the nose. That's about a 700% move. Still very good. Now let's wrap this one up with one honorable mention. I'm not sure if I'll invest in this one. Maybe you guys can share your thoughts in the comments, but it's SEI. So I'm looking at this one. I might make an investment. We'll see. But let's look at it very quickly. We've had all-time high going back to March. We've had this lower high here in December, another lower high pivot in July, and we were holding this 382 for quite a while before the retest of the 236. So given that this was a washout, returning us all the way back to the level of launch, which again, it's hard to trust that. But given that's the case, sorry, I just want to turn this on. I want to go to a weekly. Just want to see now on the daily. All right, I'm gonna hold this like that. I know it's not perfect. That's not about being perfect. That's more about just getting a majority of the data to make decisions. Again, like with crypto, you have to deal with all these wicks and crazy moves. So just considering this is your falling trend line, and here pretty much perfect, the level of the buyback. We're coiling up, and that means we don't have too much more to go before we get close to the apex of this pattern. And I would suspect it could go something like this. So breakout, get rejected at the 38-cent level, perhaps come back, test here, and then you have that move. So something like this, where it swipes quickly from the 0.5 fib all the way up to the 786, like it did in this area. And then also, because of where we're at later in the cycle, once it clears the 786, it goes right back to the prior all-time high. So what we're looking at here to there is about 400%, kind of similar to like the chain link play in regards to that ROI. But if we were to make it all the way back up to the 1.618, the golden ratio, we have $1.77 on the linear pull, and then we have about 5 almost. I'm going to put this at 480. And then now I'm going to turn this back. And then I'm going to put this a little bit lower. About 4 or 390. You see what I did there? I used the linear 4618 and I used the 1618 on the linear, or on the log pull, sorry. This gives me the extreme. So if we are to make it to the very extreme price here, it's about a 1,700% move. To me, this is a very nice move. And given this horizontal trading range and what little I know about this project, I wouldn't feel so bad getting in at these levels, which is like a second chance at getting in at the June levels. before we have a major breakout in the overall crypto market. So for me, that $3.90 territory is a hell of a move, and I would consider this as venture capital, 1,500% from here. For me, I look at that as about 1%, maybe 2% max of the overall portfolio. So nothing crazy. This isn't going to be a major, big, huge investment for me, but I'm dabbling, and I'm looking for those targets. I would say anything above that 170 territory, and this could quickly escalate in a parabolic advance, just the way every other altcoin does when it's in the final move. So we are very close, guys. I get it. It's a very scary time. We have shortly coming up, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange will be reopening. It will be reopening with a insane gap to the upside, one of the biggest ones we've probably ever seen. And this is all occurring after we had a new weekly all-time high close. We did have a gap down at the 110,000 level, which, funny enough, it came in and got filled, or it never got filled because it happened right after the CME closed. So this puts us in a weird position where Bitcoin's trading around here at 114K. We had the CME close at like 117. We have the gap still filled at 110. I mean, that's why this whole week ahead could be a lot of chop. But generally, the buyback looks pretty strong. The fact that Bitcoin dominance is getting rejected and coming right back to 59% is very good to see. We just have to wait and see how this week opens up and how everything transpires with Monday and the traditional markets opening. So I'm going to leave this at that. 2-hour long What I'm Investing in special. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you made it all the way to the end, I'm really super grateful for all of your continued support, and I hope you enjoyed today's new What I'm Investing in podcast. And I'm wishing you all an amazing rest of your day in the Matrix. Much love.